So, welcome everyone. We're going to do another set here with Shari Reinhart. Thank you so much for staying a little longer and talking a little bit more. We're at Passion, People Passion and Their Purpose. And we had started talking before about the different stages of life. And so we were about to go on a tangent, but we had to go. So we're back now. So, why don't we take it from there and see where it takes us?
Sounds good. Well, I just found it so interesting that you did bring up stages because, sometimes we're so in it, whatever it is for us in that moment, we forget, like we weren't always here or like this, or our life wasn't always looking like this, or, because nothing stays the same. So I just find that interesting. And I wanted to add to that something I learned, and no, I did not do the research on it, but I'm sure it exists. Something happens to women when we turn between 38 and 42, 43 years old. Just something happens. We look back and we wonder, why did I do this? Why did I date so many wrong men? Why? Who am I? All of that. And we get very lost in either our careers or our children's lives, our husbands' lives, and we lose ourselves. And I've just heard that so many times from people that I think 40-ish is a tremendous opportunity to really learn about who we are and what we want, and then to go from there. So,
You
yeah.
know, so coming from a different lifestyle, I don't have kids. I am married, but I don't have kids. But I got lost in my business.
Mhm.
And it's only until I sold my business last year that I'm able to or allowing myself to start to look at different things and, what do I want now? You know? So again, there's stages and then there's lifestyles because again, right, not everybody has a husband or a spouse, and not everybody has children, and so but when you do look back at yourself, you always have that like, wow, I'm feeling different as I'm getting older and I'm having more experiences. I'm feeling different.
Well, it's so interesting what you said about your career because let's face it, women just, I don't know, we're really good at losing ourselves in giving,
Whatever.
ring our businesses or whatever, our pets, whatever
Mhm.
it is. We're like so devoted, right? Like we're like bleeding hearts, and we are born nurturers. And so what you put into your business, it's so interesting because in the beginning, I think we really love it and we really have great intention. And some things just are not sustainable. And then they become our traps. So it's so interesting the way you just described that because you sold your business a year later, and all of a sudden you even had not just the capacity, but the room in your brain to think about something else. And that's scary for some people, but it's very exciting for it could be both, but it could be very exciting time. Like you can do whatever you want now.
Well,
It's
it's like when you went away, when you went to Tucson, you said Tucson, Arizona for 18 months.
yeah,
It was a whole new journey.
it was.
So, yeah,
And it was in that 40-ish age.
right, right.
Like it really was coming together for me. And yeah. And for me personally, when that happened, it was like, what the hell is going, who am I? Like what? Like I didn't know where I was. I never had so much free time in my life. Like to do, what does Shari want to do today?
Right,
Do you want to play? Does she want like it was so wide open. It was like honestly a huge canvas. And
right.
I whatever I wanted to that, like I never knew what that felt like. I grew up in a my parents, my father was very authoritarian. That was his way of showing he loved us, he cared about our raising us well, and all of that. I understand that now, but when you're a little kid and you're not allowed to talk out of line, you're not allowed to disagree, you're not allowed to say no to going, for us, it was synagogue every weekend, like forget it. And now I'm this grown woman with children, with a husband, a home of my own, and I'm thrown into this environment, literally the desert, with nothing. but myself to really figure out. Oh, it's crazy. So,
And it's going to happen. It's going to happen to a lot of people because their kids, if they have kids, their kids are going to grow up. If you had a business, you might sell your business or close your business, or you might have a job and then you move to another job, or you lose your job and you have to find another job. So there's an element of resilience in there too,
well,
right?
resilience and like for me, yeah, I guess I realize now I'm pretty strong because I go to places people a lot of my friends from way back, like the women I met in networking are not afraid to go to hard places, like to really sit with something hard and figure it out. And by that I could mean like, I was raised in an alcohol, I'm making this up, by the way. I was raised in an alcoholic home. And I didn't learn how to safe. Never knew how to, I never felt safe. Like
Mhm.
these are things we tend to ignore, run away from, and we overcompensate by doing something else or what have you, right? Like we just don't pay attention to that. We just ignore it and shove it down. That's the example that came to my mind. But like when I didn't do that with anything. When I came back from Tucson, I understood I get to shape my life. No one gets to decide for me anymore who I am or who they need me to be. I
Mhm.
became very hardcore. And like, I mean, my kids are all grown. They don't live at home anymore. My husband is newly retired, but they have in the past 10 years very often heard me say, no. I'm not doing that. And I'm not doing it because I'm closed minded. I'm doing it because I know what I need and want. And that's not the thing I need and want. And they often hear me say, I will never tell you what to do. I grew up that way. I was told exactly where to be, who to be, how to be, and I understood that I was not allowed to make those choices myself. And I have never, and I catch myself if I do, I never tell my children who they need to be for me. And that's like huge because the
Mhm.
personal growth, I know for sure, made me a much better parent. And weird in the eyes of other parents because everyone is telling their kids what they like. What do you mean you're not going to be a doctor? Right? Like, oh, what do you mean? You want to be, my son's an electrician. And like, it's like, your son's going into a trade. You know what I mean? Like, yes, my son is doing work with his hands because that's where he thrives.
Yeah.
But right? You know what I'm
So
talking
I
about,
know
Shari.
exactly what you're talking about. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting because, okay, let me just, whoa, because you go back to the work that we have to do. So to the women who want to do that work, haven't really done that work yet, just starting to do that work, starting to see that they need to do that work, what has your on yourself and also working with your clients, okay, what do people get from that? So we can go back to actually your book. Like I did have a question, like when you're writing books, I had a question. Give me 1 second here. um I wanted to know like what 1 moment.
Mhm.
Okay. For example, when you work on a book with someone or when you're working with so what does that person receive? Like, what do they get from working with you? Do you know what I'm trying to say? What's the word I'm looking for?
In the words of many of my clients,
What are
I
the outcomes? Yeah.
they tell me they get in the process. Okay. And then outcomes, I could talk about outcomes, just remind
Okay.
me.
So
So
let me do process outcomes. Go ahead.
in the process of working together, I have had clients tell me consistently, you know how to ask questions that make me go deeper or think differently. And credit to them, they're willing to let me do that. So
Mhm.
that is apparently one of that makes me different from most ghostwriters because another thing they get from me is, yeah, but you can't start a sentence with and. I said those rules are out the window. Like those rules are out the window. If it's going to write the better book, if it's going to express you better, I mean, you can do whatever you want. First of all, there's self-publishing. There's no one who's going to mark up your page and tell you you can't say what you want to say the way you want to say it. So I'm a bit of a rebel. So I'm not your typical person to work with. So what they get from me in the process
Questions.
also is the space. I hold space and I allow things to come from them. I tend not to put words in their mouths. The other thing they get is to think wider. So we all have our own patterns of thinking, our own patterns of being, and our own patterns, let's say, of writing for those who do any kind of writing at all, even for work. So we have our own style. So working with me, I throw in little wrenches and I have them think beyond something, or, so there's that. We expand the thinking patterns. And one other thing that I would say in terms of outcomes, um, very often working with me, I think about, how is this book going to look on the page? That's because I don't publish. After people work with me, they go to copy editing and publishing. I do help them find publishing houses, or, most often they self-publish on Amazon, a lot of my clients. But in terms of outcomes, it's like we visually, what do you want your book to look like? Do you want long chapters? Do you want quotes at the top? Do you want quotes on the page before? Do you want to insert research? Do you want to end with a coaching tip? If you're a coach, do you want to end with a health tip? Do you like I'm creative in terms of what the book is going to look like physically in the hand. Do you want a thick binder? Do you want, like, I think about those things, but I don't execute those once the manuscript is final.
So those are like practical outcomes. I'm also thinking of internal outcomes.
Okay.
Have they did did they make big changes in their life? Did you ever get any information about that?
Well, I only work with clients who are not still deep into their wounds. So they come to
Right.
me already strong,
Okay.
already knowing what their issues are, or coaches are very strong. They've already done the work. So when I
Yes.
write like a leadership book from the coach, I've helped a lot of coaches write their leadership books. They're they're figured out. They know themselves. So those I don't I have turned clients away and asked them, if you still want to write the book in 2 years, come to me, because I won't work with people who tell a story from a still shattered place.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
to answer to your
Okay.
question, I don't.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah. So people are already kind of there and you're able to bring them there, but if you're there, then it's better to wait until you're there type of thing.
Exactly.
They have to have a little bit of insight.
Like I will often ask, do you want to write this book from this place so that it comes out that you are still very hurt, or very
Right.
whatever that pain is? Or do you want to write the book that will show people, oh my God, I'm freaking awesome. I got through all of it. Here's what I did. Here's my story, and here's how I did it. Here's my story,
Right.
here's how I did it, really are the chunk based
Right.
books that I help people write.
Right.
That's it. I do have one client. This is the client who, she's going to hear this podcast. She's going to know who she is, but I'm allowed to talk about her. I've been given permission.
Okay.
We've been working on this book about 2 years. I mean, also, I did have, as you know, I had a terrible year of loss in 2022. So a lot of that time
Right.
was because I couldn't work. So we extended our project time. But this is a woman who literally hired me to help her write her book, and she's getting like these divine downloads. So, like, when we sit together and I ask her a question, she's not answering the question. I see her doing this, and all of a sudden, this incredible content just comes pouring out of her because she's very connected to the
Wow.
spiritual world. And her book is about that. I mean, yeah. So it's always different, Charlene.
Wow. Yeah. So you're there, you're really experiencing her process.
Yes, and she's so grateful, and we're safe and we're comfortable, and it's like I said, it's
Yeah,
intimate, private, and so all of this juice comes out of her. But she always says it's because of the questions that you ask
yeah,
that I've been able to write. That I've been shown that I need to write the book this way, and it is a much better book. In the first 3 months that we started working together, it was the hardest thing to do because she was trying so hard to take esoteric concepts about spirituality and put them into words. And we had such a rough time. I was ready to say, you do not need me. Like, I cannot do this with you. And then this process just kind of happened. It evolved into these fun sessions where I interview her and it just comes pouring out. So I don't know. It's always
that's
different.
fantastic. Yeah, that's great. So while you're writing all these books and meeting so many different people, each process is different. And so it stays exciting,
Yeah,
basically. It
right.
stays exciting.
Absolutely. And every book that comes to me, every client who wants, their stories are, right? We're all individuals, so their stories are completely unique. So it's always new.
Yeah, it's
And
always
it's
new.
over and over again.
Yeah. That's amazing. And well, it's like yeah, like if I do makeup, so every face is new. So I keep having a new chance to
Well, because
do it.
you have this, again, I called a blank canvas where
Right.
you have this
Hmm.
start, this
Hmm.
new start every time exactly.
So so let me ask you something. I might be putting you on the spot, but do you have like two or three questions that you seem to ask a lot that you could share with us today when you to get those people to a deeper level?
Yeah. Oh, not when I'm onboarding new clients. You mean when we're already in the
Well,
process?
why don't we can do both. We can do both. So when you're onboarding new clients, what are you asking them?
So usually, our first call is, okay, what's the story you want to write? So I get an overall view of something about them that they want to share. The next question is always, why are you writing it? Because some people really want to write a book just for themselves. And I'm much too expensive, I think, for someone. Like, they need to know from the beginning, like, if you're not going to publish this, like, you could go to writing workshops. There's so many fantastic offerings out there. So I want to know why they're writing the book. And I'd say 9 out of 10 people are writing because they want to publish their stories to help other people who have been in the same boat. Then I need them to share with me, okay, so how do you imagine your book? Like, how do you see it going? Um, like, really, like, when okay, now you know you want to publish it, who's your reader? So that I can imagine, I hear them talk, I learn about their tone, I learn about their language, their voice, their personality, and then I
Mhm.
learn about their content. And that helps me imagine how I can propose we work together. So
Yeah.
that's a bit of the onboarding process. And then they have questions for me, of course, that are always vary. Uh,
Mhm.
and then in the process, like, what are some of those those probing
Yeah.
questions that I ask?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard because it's so in the moment. Like, Charlene, like, when you
Hmm.
talk to me and you say something, all of a sudden something comes in my mind, and I want to keep going and I want to engage with you, and I'll ask a question that will get you maybe on a new tyrant or tirade, or tangent, or get you going, to tell us more.
Right.
All my questions are always scratching below the surface.
Hmm.
That I can tell you. I don't know what those questions are, but if I feel like someone is just sharing a story and it's like, you're putting me in the place, you're putting me in the time, you're telling me what you wore, but what was on your mind? What were you
There you go. These are the
that
questions. What was on your mind? What else?
what were you thinking? How did it make you feel? How did
Right.
it change you? Did it change you? how did that affect you to the point like now 20 years later, you're still thinking of like I will do those kind of
Hmm.
therapy type coaching questions so that I
Hmm.
get to the root of where they're at with what happened.
Hmm. Great. Yeah, those are all really good questions, and people have to feel safe with you, right? So, like you
Yeah.
said, it's a safe space. So,
Yeah.
and that brought me to another question. But I forgot that one already. So let me move on to something else when you were talking about books and questions. Oh yeah, what do you read, or what was a really good book for you to help you go deeper and find your truth?
Well, like I said, the first book was The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz that opened my
Right.
mind to like tapping into my this world that is mine inside of me and how I behave with people in my world, my close line of attack. I used to do a lot of cardio. I was at the gym like 4 mornings a week, and I used to play Deepak Chopra's. This was a fantastic book for anyone who wants. I used to play the audio,
Yeah.
The Seven Spiritual Secrets to Success. I think that's it. I'm not sure that I remember the title. Oh my God. I could actually um repeat the whole book back then to someone because I played it like 9 or 10 times over and over again. Seven Spiritual Laws of Success. I think that was the name of the book. And it's phenomenal. I still like it. Like I'll still sometimes kind of open it up and be reminded. But I picked up Eckhart Tolle when he came out all those years ago. I wasn't ready for it. I was like, what the hell is this guy talking about? We have now, and he's crazy, and he's so dull, and he's so. I really didn't like it. But then about um, just before COVID, I think it was, I said, oh, let me try this guy again. And so now I live in the power of now, and I know how to call myself home to the power of now. It stops me from being anxious, depressed, worried, stressed, and overwhelmed. So that, that he's been a great teacher to me and life changing.
Interesting. Interesting. I have that book in my thing, and I just picked it up and said, I think I'm going to read that because I feel exactly the same way as you, especially when you listen to him. He's like, who is this guy? But so
The, un-
timing,
the Untethered Soul, Michael Singer.
right? Yes.
Fantastic. Really, I've read a lot of Deepak, so if you like Deepak, but
Okay.
those were helped me groom my new self. They-
Perfect. And you brought up
and
a
Joe
real,
Dispenza, sorry,
eh?
Dr. Joe Dispenza,
Okay. I've heard, yeah,
who
that's
I
great.
saw live before he made it so big, and he's
Right.
phenomenal.
He's huge now. He's on all kinds of websites and master classes and like
Very brilliant.
one commune and Mind Valley and yeah, it's a great world. It's really a cool world. Yeah,
Yeah.
that part of the world is really cool. You mentioned timing. So like you had picked up Tolle a long time ago and you weren't ready for it, and now you are. So can you speak with that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I guess like you talked about being at different stages.
Right.
So I treated I used to call it my path to spirituality. Now I call it a spiritual journey to healing and to healing, a spiritual transformation to healing, because I realize now over it's 3 decades of doing this work, I've made it my priority. I've thankfully in the very luxurious position where I've always had or carved out the time to read these books and to learn from these teachers. So in those 30 years, like Don Miguel Ruiz's Four Agreements now would never satisfy my curiosity because I get it. I do the work. I understood it. I applied it. I acted out. I am that. most of the time. I try to be that. So it's like dull to me. So it's almost like going to elementary school. What you learn in grade six isn't appropriate for a grade oneer. They're not ready for that. So I felt like I wasn't ready for Eckhart Tolle, and I really couldn't handle his voice. Now I actually will sit on a yoga mat and cross my legs and listen to a podcast, and his voice is soothing to me, which I'm like, what? Right? So
Yeah, it's so weird, eh? How things change and how we look at things differently and we experience the same thing in a different way because we're coming at it in a different way, in a different time in our life. And so, maybe someone listening to this podcast might start with the four agreements if they haven't done that and move into different things afterwards. But that's yeah, I find
yeah,
that's really
so
interesting.
that's how it seems to have been with me. And now I'm actually looking for a new teacher. So I just worked with a coach. He's a radical transformation coach. Like, he does everything. I don't know if you're familiar with Bhaskar Goswami.
I know him from Facebook and I saw that you guys were connected. Yeah, yeah.
So he's been a friend of mine for 15 years, and although we're busy in our separate lives, he's someone I've always kept close to me. This is a little trick people can learn. If you think in a moment like, oh, I could really benefit from reading this book or going to see that show or going to a workshop or whatever, something pops into your head. And if it's not the right time for you, just keep it in your head, in the back somewhere. So Bhaskar is someone I met over 15 years ago, and I knew one day, somehow, some way, he would be important to me. So I
Mhm.
tucked him away and I made sure I never lost that connection to him. Once in a while, if a year went by, I'd go, hey, Bhaskar, it's me, checking in. How are you? Just to make sure he knew I was around. And sure enough, fast forward all these years, I hired him to coach me. And I'm only telling the story because now I haven't been able to find a new book that I want to read to help me continue growing, because I'm curious and I love to learn, and I want to keep kind of becoming the highest version of myself. I'm nowhere near that yet. So instead of a book, I worked with him. And it
That's
was
great.
amazing. So I had this one-on-one, first, highly personalized. Um, yeah,
What a
you know,
gift you gave to yourself.
exactly. And that's another thing. I never believed in investing in myself. I never spent money on myself back in the days of Don Miguel Ruiz. And somehow, I don't know, I understood, like, if I'm not going to invest in my well-being, whatever that means to me, who's going to do that?
Yeah,
Who's going to know I need that?
yeah.
So if you're not going to do it for yourself, no one's going to do that for you. They don't even know you want it or you need it. They're going to buy you a vacuum cleaner or a diamond. They are not buying you a workshop retreat.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when you do, going back to, people, their passion and purpose, again, um, passion and purpose end up being, for yourself in a selfish way, but it always ends up being for everybody, right? For the people around you or for the public, depending on how big you take it. When you do those good things for yourself, you are doing it for those around you as well. And you are contributing to your family, to your partners, to your friends, to your community.
This work, my husband, before I started on this path, I think I mentioned in the other podcast, I was always mean and I was always angry and I was always
Mm,
overwhelmed and I was always resentful. That was a big one for me. Overwhelm and resentment were two things I really had to work through. Those were mine. And back in those days when I had not figured out how to be a better person in my home with my family, my husband used to always say to me, Shari, you are the matriarch, you're the mother of the household. Your mood affects all of us.
wow.
Whoa, right? What a
Mm.
nice way to say, you better fix yourself, girl. Right?
A
What a
100%.
And I didn't get mad because he said it in a very kind way, not accusatory or whatever. And he said it many, many times. So I understood this was a thing
Yeah.
that working. And who doesn't want to be, who doesn't want to be the best makeup artist when you're applying makeup,
The
right?
best person, the best everything, like,
Who doesn't want that? So when someone shows you who you are,
yeah, exactly.
so yeah,
But thank him, right? Like,
absolutely.
wow,
I do.
big time. That's,
100%. I have reminded him over the years that that was a gift
yeah,
that because I did that work.
yeah,
And so all that to say, you're right. When you do this work, your plan isn't to affect positively other people, but by accident, that's what happens because it's an energy, right? It's a
yeah,
vibe.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Like if the air is light and kind of happy, then the people feed off, they breathe that air. It's like
yeah. Beautiful. Fantastic. Well, that's a great way to end for today. Um, because we got to remind everybody that we all have to keep working on ourselves and sharing our passion and, continue to find purpose with each other and continue the work for sure. Wow.
yeah, and I think, just because of the name of your podcast, like, if I were to wrap myself up in all of this, my passion became self-work, really. And then my purpose, I'm getting to explore self-work and help others with theirs through the cathartic experience of writing their book. So my passion and my purpose are completely aligned. And that took me many, many years to figure out. So wherever we are, those stages that you talk about, it's really important to just be kind to yourself and give yourself the time to grow into the next phase of you.
So let's just do a quick high five because that was amazing. High five.
Thanks for the
Wow.
opportunity to share myself with your world.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. I've always wanted to have this conversation with you. So I've always held space for you. All these years, just going back, to what you said
Love
before.
it. I
Have
appreciate it
a
so much. You
have a wonderful, wonderful day.
too.
Thank you. Okay. Take care. Bye. Wow, that was really nice. So I'm going to leave Shari's information in the, post or wherever it is that I put this. And I want to thank you guys so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're inspired. I hope you do something good for yourself today and share it with somebody else. And I guess we'll see you soon. Thank you.